The late afternoon sun cast long shadows across Pine Ridge Avenue as Dr. Andre Wilson drove his midnight blue Tesla Model S through the quiet neighborhood. After a grueling 16-hour shift at Memorial Hospital performing 2 emergency heart surgeries, all he wanted was to get home, shower, and collapse into bed. The tree-lined streets with their grand houses offered a peaceful drive that usually helped clear his mind after difficult days. Andre adjusted his rearview mirror and noticed the flash of red and blue lights behind him. He frowned, checking his speedometer. He'd been driving 5 miles under the limit, making sure to stop completely at every sign. With a sigh, he signaled and pulled over to the curb, the tires of his Tesla crunching softly against fallen autumn leaves. "What now?" he muttered to himself, reaching for his wallet in the inner pocket of his suit jacket. He'd been stopped 3 times in the last 2 months, each time for something trivial that never resulted in a ticket. The pattern wasn't lost on him. Through his side mirror, Andre watched as Officer Paul Davis approached, one hand resting near his holster, a detail that never failed to make Andre's heart rate tick up despite his calm exterior. He lowered his window and placed both hands on the steering wheel where they could be clearly seen. "License and registration," Officer Davis said without preamble, his eyes scanning the interior of the luxury vehicle. "Good evening, officer," Andre replied, his voice steady and professional, the same tone he used when speaking to hospital administrators. "May I ask why I'm being pulled over?" Officer Davis's face remained impassive. "You rolled through that stop sign back there. License and registration, please." Andre knew he hadn't, but arguing would only escalate things. "I'm going to reach for my wallet in my jacket, and then the registration from the glove compartment, okay?" The officer gave a curt nod, watching Andre's every move with unmasked suspicion. As Andre handed over his documents, he noticed Mrs. Chen from 3 houses down walking her corgi. She slowed her pace, watching the scene unfold with obvious interest. Andre gave her a small nod, grateful for the presence of witnesses. Officer Davis studied the license and registration with unusual intensity, glancing repeatedly between the documents and Andre's face. "This your car, Dr. Wilson?" The emphasis on his title held a note of disbelief that made Andre's jaw tighten. "Yes, it is. I've owned it for about 3 years now." "Pretty nice car for this neighborhood," Officer Davis commented, running his flashlight beam across the leather interior, despite the daylight providing plenty of visibility. "I live 6 blocks from here," Andre replied, keeping his voice even. "I'm coming home from my shift at the hospital." Officer Davis ignored this information, instead pointing his flashlight at Andre's hospital ID badge still clipped to his lapel. "Wait here," he said, taking the documents back to his patrol car. Andre took a deep breath, trying to release the tension building in his shoulders. Through the mirror, he could see Officer Davis speaking into his radio, gesturing toward the Tesla. More neighbors had begun to notice the scene. An elderly couple had paused their evening walk, and a young woman with a jogging stroller had slowed to a stop nearby. 5 minutes passed, then 10. Andre checked his watch, thinking about the stack of patient files he still needed to review before morning, and the dinner getting cold in the takeout bag on his passenger seat. His phone buzzed with a text from his wife asking if everything was okay. He didn't reach for it. Finally, Officer Davis returned, but instead of handing back Andre's documents, he asked, "Step out of the vehicle, please." "May I ask why that's necessary?" Andre asked, his stomach tightening. "Just step out of the car, sir." The "sir" sounded more like an afterthought than respect. Aware of the growing audience of neighbors, Andre carefully opened his door and stepped out, his hospital scrubs visible beneath his open suit jacket. He hadn't had time to change after the last emergency surgery. "Do you have proof of purchase for this vehicle?" Officer Davis asked, circling the Tesla like he was inspecting it for damage. "My registration shows I'm the owner," Andre replied, feeling his patience wearing thin. "Is there something specific you're looking for, Officer Davis?" The officer stopped his circling. "We've had reports of high-end vehicle thefts in the area. This car matches a description." Andre blinked in disbelief. "You think I stole my own car?" "I didn't say that," Officer Davis said, but his expression said otherwise. but it's my job to investigate suspicious circumstances. What exactly is suspicious about a man driving his own car home? Andre asked, careful to keep his voice level despite his rising frustration. Before Officer Davis could answer, another patrol car pulled up behind them. The gathering of neighbors had grown to about 7 people now, with a few openly recording the interaction on their phones. Andre recognized Mr. Washington from the community center among them, his concerned expression providing a small measure of support. A second officer, badge reading Reyes, approached them. "What's the situation here, Davis?" "Possible stolen vehicle," Officer Davis replied, not looking at Andre. "Waiting on confirmation." Andre felt a flash of anger. "This is ridiculous. I've shown you my registration and license. I'm a cardiologist at Memorial. I just finished a double shift and I'd like to go home." Officer Reyes looked at Andre more carefully, noticing the scrubs, the surgical cap still partially sticking out of his pocket, and the dark circles under his eyes. "You work at Memorial? My cousin was treated there last year. Cardiac wing, if I remember right." Andre nodded, recognizing an opportunity. "What's your cousin's name? I might know the case." While they talked, Officer Davis received a call on his radio. He stepped away to answer it, his back turned to them. "Look," Andre said quietly to Officer Reyes, "I understand you're doing your jobs, but this is the 4th time I've been stopped in this neighborhood in 2 months. I live here, I work at the hospital, my registration matches my ID. At what point does this become harassment?" Officer Reyes had the decency to look uncomfortable. "Let me speak with my colleague." As the 2 officers conferred in hushed tones by their vehicles, Mr. Washington approached Andre. "Everything okay, Doc? My wife and I saw what was happening from our porch." "Just another case of driving while black in Pine Ridge," Andre replied, with a tired smile that didn't reach his eyes. "Thanks for stopping, Thomas." "We're recording," Mr. Washington said, nodding toward his wife who stood nearby with her phone raised. "Just in case." Andre felt grateful for their presence but hated that such precautions were necessary. He glanced at his watch again. He'd now been detained for nearly 20 minutes for a stop sign violation that never happened. The officers returned, Officer Davis looking notably less confident than before. "Your registration checks out," he said reluctantly, handing back Andre's documents. "You're free to go." "That's it?" Andre asked. "No apology for suggesting I stole my own car, for detaining me without cause." Officer Davis's expression hardened. "We were responding to reports of stolen vehicles in the area. Just doing our job." "Your job is to protect and serve everyone in this community," Andre said, his voice firm, but controlled. "Including me." A tense silence fell between them, broken only when Officer Reyes stepped forward. "We apologize for the inconvenience, Dr. Wilson. Have a good evening." As the officers finally walked back to their vehicles, Andre could hear the murmurs of the neighbors who had witnessed the entire interaction. Some looked uncomfortable, others angry, a few embarrassed. Mrs. Chen approached him, her corgi straining at the leash. "That was awful," she said. "Are you okay?" Andre nodded, suddenly feeling the weight of the day, the life-saving surgeries, the hours on his feet, and now this degrading experience in front of his neighbors. "I'm fine, just tired." As he got back into his Tesla, Andre caught Officer Davis, watching him in his rearview mirror. Their eyes met briefly before the patrol car pulled away. Andre sat there for a moment, collecting himself, aware that this story was far from over. His phone buzzed again with another message from his wife. He picked it up this time, typing a simple message. "On my way home now. I'll tell you everything when I get there." With a deep breath, he pulled away from the curb, conscious of the eyes still watching him, wondering how many more times he would have to prove he belonged in his own neighborhood, driving his own car, living his own life. The next morning, Andre sat at his kitchen island, coffee cup warming his hands as he scrolled through his phone. His wife Tanya placed a plate of toast in front of him before sitting down with her own breakfast. "You've been quiet since last night," she said, studying his face. That stop really got to you, didn't it? Andre nodded, turning his phone to show her the screen. Thomas Washington sent me this. His wife uploaded the video to their neighborhood watch group. The video already had over 200 comments, most expressing outrage at how he'd been treated. Some neighbors he'd never even met were calling for a community meeting with the police department. I don't want this to become a big thing, Andre sighed, putting down his phone. I just want to go to work, save lives, and come home without being treated like a criminal. Tanya reached across the counter to squeeze his hand. I know, but maybe this is the thing that finally changes something around here. Pine Ridge needs to face what's happening. Before Andre could respond, his phone rang. The hospital. He answered immediately, listening intently before saying, I'll be there in 20 minutes. He hung up and gulped down the rest of his coffee. Emergency valve replacement, I have to go. Be careful, Tanya called as he grabbed his keys, knowing she meant more than just the drive to work. The hospital parking garage was nearly empty at this early hour. Andre pulled his Tesla into his assigned space, gathering his bag and the extra set of scrubs he always kept in the car. As he walked toward the elevator, he noticed a police cruiser parked near the entrance. His steps slowed when he recognized Officer Davis leaning against the vehicle, clearly waiting for someone. Waiting. For him. Andre considered turning around, but he had a patient who needed him. He straightened his shoulders and continued walking. Dr. Wilson, Officer Davis called out, pushing himself away from the cruiser. Got a minute? Actually, I don't, Andre replied coolly. I have an emergency surgery. This won't take long, Davis insisted, stepping directly into Andre's path. I wanted to talk to you about yesterday. Andre checked his watch pointedly. Someone's life is literally on the line right now, officer. Whatever you have to say can wait until after I've done my job. For a moment, it seemed like Davis might try to stop him anyway. Then, surprising Andre, he stepped aside. I'll wait. 4 hours later, Andre scrubbed out of surgery, the tension in his shoulders finally easing as he replayed the successful procedure in his mind. The patient would recover. A 62-year-old grandfather who'd get to see his grandchildren grow up because Andre had been there to help him. This was why he'd become a doctor. These moments made everything else worth it. His peaceful reflection was interrupted when he stepped into the physician's lounge and found Officer Davis sitting on one of the couches, uniform jacket unbuttoned, looking uncomfortably out of place. Among the doctors coming and going between shifts, "How did you get in here?" Andre asked, too surprised to hide his irritation. Davis stood up quickly. I talked to the hospital security, told them it was police business. Andre crossed his arms. And is it? Police business? Look, Davis said, lowering his voice as a group of nurses walked by, giving them curious glances. I'm not here officially. I wanted to explain myself. Explain yourself? Andre repeated, disbelief evident in his tone. You accused me of stealing my own car in front of my neighbors. I know how it looked, Davis said, running a hand through his short hair. But you have to understand, we've had 3 luxury cars stolen in that area in the past month. Your car matched the description of one that was reported missing 2 days ago. A midnight blue Tesla? Andre asked skeptically. Davis had the decency to look uncomfortable. A dark-colored electric vehicle. The report wasn't specific. So any black man driving any dark-colored car is automatically suspicious? Andre grabbed a water bottle from the mini-fridge, needing something to do with his hands. It wasn't because you're black, Davis insisted, though his eyes wouldn't meet Andre's. Then why didn't you just say that when you pulled me over? Why didn't you simply explain that you were looking for a stolen vehicle and ask for my documentation? Instead, you treated me like I was already guilty. Davis opened his mouth, then closed it again, clearly struggling for words. Dr. Patel, the chief of cardiology, poked his head into the lounge. Andre, great work in there. Mr. Lawson's family is asking to speak with you when you have a moment. Thanks, Raj, I'll be right there, Andre replied, grateful for the interruption. After Dr. Patel left, Andre turned back to Officer Davis. I need to speak with my patient's family. If you want to continue this conversation, it will have to be another time. I've been placed on administrative leave, Davis blurted out, stopping Andre as he reached for the door. The video your neighbor posted went viral locally. Someone sent it to my captain. Andre hadn't expected this. I didn't ask for that to happen. I know you didn't, Davis admitted. But maybe it needed to. Look, I've been on the force for 12 years. I've never had a complaint filed against me. I'm good at my job. And yet, Andre said quietly, you couldn't see past the color of my skin to do that job properly yesterday. The truth of the statement hung between them, heavy and undeniable. My sister has a heart condition, Davis said suddenly. Mitral valve. Prolapse. She nearly died last year when it worsened unexpectedly. Andre wasn't sure where this was going. I'm sorry to hear that. The doctor who saved her was black, Davis continued. Dr. Thompson at County General. I sat in that waiting room for 6 hours while he operated on her. When he came out to tell us she would be okay, I hugged him. I didn't see a black doctor then. I just saw the man who saved my little sister. So what's your point? Andre asked, though he thought he knew what Davis was trying to say. My point is I know better, Davis admitted, his voice dropping. Or I should know better, but when I'm in uniform patrolling certain neighborhoods. He trailed off, shaking his head. It's not an excuse. I just wanted you to know I'm not some kind of monster. I never thought you were a monster, Andre replied. That's part of what makes this so frustrating. It's not just the openly racist people we have to worry about. It's also the good people who don't recognize their own biases until they've already caused harm. The hospital PA system crackled to life. Dr. Wilson to the cardiac care waiting room. Dr. Wilson to cardiac care. I have to go, Andre said, turning toward the door again. Wait, Davis called after him. The thing is, after I got put on leave, I looked you up. You're not just any doctor. You pioneered that new valve replacement technique they're using all over the country now. You've saved hundreds of lives. Andre paused, his hand on the door handle. And if I worked at a gas station, would my life matter less then? Davis had no answer for that. That's the problem, Officer Davis, Andre continued. My worth as a human being shouldn't depend on my job title or how many lives I've saved. I shouldn't have to be exceptional just to be treated with basic dignity. Before Davis could respond, the door to the lounge swung open, and Lieutenant Gregory Rivera walked in, his expression grim when he spotted Davis. I thought I might find you here, Rivera said to Davis. What part of administrative leave was unclear, officer? Davis straightened his posture instantly. Sir, I was just harassing Dr. Wilson at his workplace. Rivera finished for him. That video was bad enough. Do you want to add stalking charges to the mix? It's fine, Lieutenant, Andre interjected, surprising himself by coming to Davis's defense. We were just talking. Rivera looked between the two men, skepticism clear on his face. Dr. Wilson, I want to personally apologize for Officer Davis's conduct yesterday. The department does not condone profiling of any kind. Yet it happens every day, Andre replied simply. Rivera didn't deny it. Instead, he turned to Davis. Wait for me in the car. We'll discuss your future with the department when we get back to the station. After Davis left, Rivera handed Andre a business card. The chief would like to meet with you. He's concerned about community relations in Pine Ridge, especially after this incident. Andre took the card, tucking it into his pocket without looking at it. I'll think about it. For what it's worth, Rivera added, I grew up in Pine Ridge. It used to be a different neighborhood, working class, mostly Latino and black families. The changes in the last decade have brought challenges. Challenges like assuming the black and Latino residents who managed to stay don't belong there anymore, Andre asked pointedly. Rivera nodded, acknowledging the truth in Andre's words. That's exactly the kind of conversation the chief wants to have. Change has to start somewhere, Dr. Wilson. After Rivera left, Andre took a moment to collect his thoughts before heading to meet with his patient's family. The card in his pocket felt heavier than it should have. He hadn't asked to become the face of this issue in Pine Ridge. He hadn't asked for any of this. All he'd wanted was to drive home after saving lives, to kiss his wife, to sleep in his bed, in his house, in his neighborhood. without having to prove he belonged there. But maybe Lieutenant Rivera was right. Change had to start somewhere. And, maybe just maybe, this was where it would begin. 3 days had passed since Officer Davis's unexpected visit to the hospital. Andre sat in his car outside the Pine Ridge Police Department, the business card Lieutenant Rivera had given him lying on the passenger seat. He'd been sitting there for 15 minutes debating whether to go inside or drive away. His phone buzzed with a text from Tanya. "Whatever you decide, I'm with you." Andre smiled, grateful for her support. She knew him well enough to sense his indecision, even from across town. He picked up the card, took a deep breath, and got out of the car. The station was busier than he'd expected, with officers moving purposefully between desks and civilians waiting in plastic chairs along the wall. A young officer at the front desk looked up as Andre approached. "Can I help you?" she asked. "I'm here to see Chief Harmon," Andre replied, showing her Rivera's card. "Lieutenant Rivera asked me to come in." Recognition flickered across her face. Andre wondered if she'd seen the video or if word had simply spread through the department. Either way, she quickly picked up the phone, spoke quietly for a moment, then gestured toward a hallway. "Down that hall, last door on the right. The chief is expecting you." Andre walked through the station, feeling the weight of eyes following him. He knocked on the door marked Chief Michael Harmon. "Come in," called a deep voice. Chief Harmon was a tall man with salt and pepper hair and the weathered face of someone who'd seen too much in his 30 years on the force. He stood as Andre entered, extending his hand. "Dr. Wilson, thank you for coming. Please, have a seat." The office was surprisingly modest. No fancy decorations or imposing furniture, just practical filing cabinets and a wall of photos showing community events and award ceremonies. Andre noticed that many featured Harmon with residents from diverse backgrounds. "I appreciate you taking the time," Harmon began, settling back into his chair. "I wanted to speak with you personally about what happened with Officer Davis." Andre nodded but remained silent, waiting to hear what the chief had to say before revealing his own thoughts. "I've seen the video," Harmon continued. "I've also reviewed the body cam footage, which captured even more than what was posted online. There's no excuse for how you were treated." "Is that the official position of the department?" Andre asked. "Because I've heard plenty of excuses already." Harmon's expression remained steady. "Officer Davis has been suspended without pay pending a full review, but I didn't ask you here just to tell you that." He reached into a drawer and pulled out a folder, opening it on his desk. "In the past 6 months, traffic stops in Pine Ridge have increased by 40%. Care to guess what percentage of those stops involved Black or Latino drivers?" "I have a feeling it's significantly higher than our representation in the neighborhood," Andre replied. 78%, Harmon confirmed. "In a neighborhood. That's now only 22% Black and Latino residents." Andre wasn't surprised by the numbers, but hearing them stated so plainly by the chief of police was unexpected. "The question is," Harmon continued, "what are we going to do about it?" "We?" Andre repeated. "Yes, we," Harmon said firmly. "The department and the community. This isn't just about one officer or one incident. It's systemic, and systemic problems require systemic solutions." Before Andre could respond, there was a knock at the door. Lieutenant Rivera entered, followed by an unexpected figure, Detective Michael Lee, whom Andre recognized immediately. "Mike?" Andre said in surprise, standing to greet his old friend with a quick embrace. "What are you doing here?" Detective Lee smiled. "I work here, remember, but I should be asking you that question." "You two know each other?" Chief Harmon asked. "We grew up together," Lee explained. "Same block in Westwood before it got gentrified, and we all had to move. I haven't seen this guy since your wedding, man. How's Tanya?" "She's good," Andre replied, still processing this unexpected reunion. "She's running the community health clinic now." "Always the overachievers, both of you," Lee said with genuine admiration. Chief Harmon cleared his throat. "Detective Lee is here because he's been heading our internal review of bias in policing. When Lieutenant Rivera mentioned your name, he immediately asked to be included in this conversation." Andre turned to his childhood friend with newfound understanding. So you've been tracking these stops? Lee nodded, his expression growing serious. For over a year now. The data doesn't lie, Andre. We have a problem, and it's getting worse as the neighborhood changes. The thing is, Rivera added, most of our officers don't see themselves as biased. They point to crime statistics, stolen vehicle reports, neighborhood complaints, all of which can themselves be products of bias, Andre finished for him. Exactly, Lee agreed. It's a self-reinforcing cycle. We need to break it, but we need help from the community to do it. Andre looked between the three men, understanding now why he'd been asked to come in. And that's where I come in? As what? The respectable black professional who can bridge the gap? As someone who was wronged and has every right to be angry, Harmon corrected him, but who might also be willing to help make things better instead of just filing a lawsuit and making headlines. Andre hadn't actually considered filing a lawsuit, though several neighbors had suggested it. He sat back down, considering the chief's words. What exactly are you proposing? Rivera pulled a chair closer. We're forming a civilian oversight committee for the department. People from the community who will review police conduct, help shape training, and have real input on policies. We'd like you to be part of it. And this committee would have actual authority? Andre asked skeptically. Or would it be for show? I've secured approval from the mayor and city council, Harmon said. The committee will have subpoena power for department records and a direct line to my office. It's not a token gesture, Dr. Wilson. Andre looked at his old friend. Mike, you really think this could make a difference? Lee leaned forward, his voice dropping. You remember my brother Tony? How many times he got stopped walking home from basketball practice? Andre nodded. Tony had been stopped so frequently that their mothers had implemented a buddy system. The boys were never allowed to walk alone in their own neighborhood. Tony's son is 12 now, Lee continued. Lives right here in Pine Ridge with his mom. I don't want him growing up with the same fear we had. I need people I trust on this committee, people who won't back down when it gets tough. The weight of those words settled over the room. Andre understood then that this wasn't just about his own experience or even about Officer Davis. It was about changing patterns that had persisted for generations. When would this committee start? He asked. We're hoping to announce it next week, Harmon replied. First meeting the week after. Andre thought about his schedule at the hospital, the research paper he was supposed to be finishing, the precious, little free time he had with Tanya. But he also thought about what it would mean to do nothing, to walk away and leave things as they were. I'll need to talk to my wife, he said finally, and I'd want to know who else is on this committee. Of course, Harmon agreed, sliding a folder across the desk. Here's the information on the proposed structure and the other community members we've approached. Take your time. As Andre reached for the folder, the door to Harmon's office burst open. Officer Davis stood in the doorway, his face flushed with emotion. Chief, I need to... He stopped abruptly when he saw Andre, his eyes widening in surprise. Dr. Wilson? The room went silent. Rivera and Lee both tensed, ready to intervene if necessary. Officer Davis, Chief Harmon said sternly, you're on administrative leave. You shouldn't be here. I know, sir, Davis replied, not taking his eyes off Andre. But I've been thinking about what Dr. Wilson said at the hospital, about not needing to be exceptional to deserve basic dignity. He swallowed hard. He was right. Andre hadn't expected this admission, especially not in front of Davis's superiors. I've been going through my stop records for the past year, Davis continued, really looking at the patterns, and He paused, visibly struggling. I found things I'm not proud of. Chief Harmon exchanged glances with Rivera and Lee, then looked back at Davis. Come in and close the door. Davis entered hesitantly, clearly aware he was interrupting something important. I've written up a full statement, he said, holding up a folder similar to the one Andre had just received. Every stop I've made where I now believe bias played a role in my decision-making. It's all there. Dates, names, outcomes. What exactly are you hoping to accomplish with this, officer? Harmon asked, his tone neutral but his expression intense. Davis finally looked directly at Andre. I want to be part of the solution, not part of the problem. Whatever consequences come from this, I'll accept them. But I want to do better. Andre studied the man who had humiliated him just days ago, searching for signs of insincerity or political calculation. Instead, he saw something unexpected: genuine remorse and determination. Accountability has to come before reconciliation, Andre said quietly. But reconciliation has to be possible, or what's the point of any of this? For the first time since entering the room, Davis's shoulders relaxed slightly. That's more than I have any right to ask for. Chief Harmon took Davis's folder, adding it to the growing stack on his desk. We'll discuss your statement and its implications later, officer. For now, return home and await further instructions. After Davis left, Andre picked up the folder about the Oversight Committee. Send me the details for the first meeting, he said. I'll be there. As he walked out of the station a few minutes later, Andre felt something he hadn't expected: a cautious sense of hope. Change wouldn't come easily or quickly, but for the first time he could see a path forward. 2 weeks later, the Pine Ridge Community Center hummed with voices. The first meeting of the Police Oversight Committee was about to begin, and the room was filled beyond capacity. Residents sat shoulder to shoulder in folding chairs while others stood along the walls. News cameras were set up in the back, their red lights blinking. Andre sat at a long table at the front of the room, alongside 7 other committee members: a retired judge, a high school principal, a small business owner, a college student, a pastor, a social worker, and his old friend Detective Lee, who would serve as the police department liaison. Chief Harmon sat in the front row, his presence a clear signal of the department's commitment. Tanya squeezed Andre's hand under the table. She'd insisted on being there, rearranging her clinic schedule to attend. You're doing the right thing, she whispered as Judge Rodriguez called the meeting to order. Thank you all for coming, the judge began. The turnout shows how important this issue is to our community. For too long, there's been a disconnect between law enforcement and the people they serve. This committee aims to bridge that gap. Andre scanned the crowd, recognizing many faces from his neighborhood. Mr. Washington gave him a thumbs up from the third row. Mrs. Chen nodded encouragingly. But what caught his attention was Officer Davis, sitting quietly in the back corner out of uniform, almost unrecognizable in jeans and a button-down shirt. Their eyes met briefly across the room. Davis gave a small, uncertain nod. Andre returned it, then refocused on the judge's introduction. Each committee member will briefly introduce themselves and explain why they joined, Judge Rodriguez announced. Dr. Wilson, would you start us off? Andre hadn't prepared anything formal to say. He took a deep breath and stood. My name is Andre Wilson. I'm a cardiologist at Memorial Hospital. He paused, feeling the weight of all those eyes on him. 3 weeks ago, I was driving home from work when I was pulled over by an officer who accused me of stealing my own car. A murmur rippled through the crowd. I could focus on that one incident, that one officer. But the truth is, it's part of a pattern that affects many of us. I joined this committee because I believe we can do better, all of us together. The police and the community aren't separate entities. We're neighbors, friends, sometimes even family. He glanced at Mike Lee, who nodded in encouragement. I'm not here to point fingers or assign blame. I'm here to help create solutions. Real, practical changes that will make our neighborhood safer and more just for everyone. Because when a black doctor in a Tesla can't drive home without being harassed, none of us are truly safe. The room erupted in applause. Andre sat down, feeling slightly embarrassed by the response. One by one, the other committee members introduced themselves. Each had their own story. The pastor, whose youth group members were constantly stopped and questioned. The business owner who'd had the police called on him while opening his own store. The college student who'd developed an app to record police interactions after her brother was wrongfully arrested. But there were other perspectives, too. The social worker spoke about police officers she'd counseled who were dealing with PTSD after traumatic incidents. The high school principal talked about the school resource officer who'd gone above and beyond to connect with at-risk students. After the introductions, Judge Rodriguez opened the floor for public comments. Dozens of hands shot up. For the next hour, residents shared their experiences, both positive and negative, with the local police. Some accounts were heartbreaking, others hopeful. Then, to Andre's surprise, Officer Davis raised his hand. A hush fell over the room as people recognized him from the viral video. "We should hear from everyone," Andre said, nodding to the judge. Davis stood, clearly nervous. "My name is Paul Davis. I was a patrol officer in Pine Ridge for 8 years. He cleared his throat. "I'm currently on suspension because of how I treated Dr. Wilson during a traffic stop." The room grew so quiet that Andre could hear the hum of the fluorescent lights overhead. "I came here today to apologize, not just to Dr. Wilson but to this community. I've spent the last few weeks reviewing my record, talking to a counselor about implicit bias, and really listening to people I've hurt." Davis's voice grew steadier as he continued. "I always thought I was one of the good ones. I joined the force to help people, but somewhere along the way I started seeing threats instead of neighbors." He looked directly at Andre. "What happened that day wasn't about a stolen car report. It was about me seeing a black man in an expensive car in a wealthy neighborhood and making assumptions. I was wrong, and I'm sorry." The silence that followed was electric. Andre could feel the room collectively holding its breath, waiting to see how he would respond. He hadn't expected this public apology, wasn't prepared for it. Before he could formulate a response, an elderly woman in the second row stood up. Andre recognized her as Mrs. Taylor, who'd lived in Pine Ridge for over 50 years. "Young man," she said, addressing Davis. "Apologies are good, they're necessary. But they're just words unless they're followed by actions. What are you going to do differently?" Davis nodded, accepting her challenge. "You're absolutely right, ma'am. That's why I've volunteered to help develop new training protocols for the department. I've also started mentoring at the youth center, trying to build relationships with kids who've only ever seen police as a threat. And I'm here today because I want to listen and learn. Would you be willing to share your self-analysis with other officers?" asked the college student committee member. "The patterns you found in your own stops could be valuable data." "I already have," Davis replied. "Chief Harmon has my full report. It's not pretty, but it's honest." Chief Harmon stood then. "Officer Davis's report has been instrumental in identifying problematic patterns within our department. We're using it to develop new guidelines for traffic stops and community interactions." Andre watched this exchange with mixed emotions. Part of him was still angry about how he'd been treated. Another part recognized the courage it took for Davis to come forward, to admit his mistakes publicly. "I have a proposal," Andre said, surprising himself. All eyes turned to him. Officer Davis mentioned counseling about implicit bias. "What if we created a mandatory program for all officers, not as punishment, but as education? And what if community members participated too, sharing their experiences directly?" Mike Lee leaned forward. "That could work. Breaking down these barriers requires both sides to show up." "Both sides?" the pastor questioned. "That implies equal power, which we know isn't the case." "You're right," Andre acknowledged. "The power dynamic is unbalanced. But change has to start somewhere, and it has to involve everyone." The discussion that followed was passionate but productive. Ideas flowed freely. Body cameras with community oversight of footage, regular town halls between officers and residents, community service requirements for the police force, ride-along programs for civilians. By the end of the 3-hour meeting, they had outlined 5 concrete initiatives to present to the city council. The energy in the room was cautiously optimistic. As people began to file out, Davis approached Andre, keeping a respectful distance. "Dr. Wilson, could I speak with you for a moment?" Tanya squeezed Andre's arm supportively before stepping away to give them privacy. "I meant what I said," Davis began. "I'm truly sorry." Andre studied the man before him, no longer the intimidating officer who had humiliated him, but someone struggling with his own failings, trying to do better. "I believe you," Andre said finally, "but this isn't about you and me anymore. It's about making sure what happened to me doesn't happen to anyone else." Davis nodded. That's why I'm here. I want to be part of the solution. It won't be easy, Andre warned. You'll face resistance from other officers. You'll have to confront uncomfortable truths about yourself and the system you're part of. I know, Davis replied, but it's necessary work. Andre considered this for a moment, then extended his hand. Then let's get to work. As they shook hands, a photographer from the local paper captured the moment. The flash briefly lit up their faces, not as adversaries, not quite as friends, but as two men committed to the difficult path of change. Later that night, as Andre and Tanya drove home, she asked, "Do you really think anything will change?" Andre thought about the energy in that room, the difficult conversations that had already begun, the unexpected allies who had emerged. I don't know, he answered honestly, but for the first time I think it's possible. As they pulled into their driveway, Andre noticed their neighbor across the street watching them from his porch. The older white man had never spoken to them in the 3 years they'd lived there. But tonight he raised his hand in a tentative wave. Andre waved back, a small gesture that somehow felt significant. 6 months later, Andre stood at the podium in the Pine Ridge Community Center, looking out at faces that had become familiar over countless meetings and conversations. The room was packed again, but the atmosphere was different from that first tense gathering. There was an ease among the crowd, a sense of shared purpose that hadn't existed before. Before I hand things over to Chief Harmon for the official numbers, Andre began, I want to take a moment to reflect on how far we've come in 6 months. When we started this journey, many of us doubted anything would really change. Some of us were angry, others were defensive. Most of us were just tired of the same old patterns playing out in our neighborhood. Tanya sat in the front row, beaming with pride. Beside her was Thomas Washington, who had become Andre's right-hand man on the committee, bringing decades of community organizing experience to their efforts. We've had difficult conversations, Andre continued. We've disagreed, sometimes strongly. We've had setbacks, but we've also made real progress. He gestured to the large screen behind him, where photos cycled through, community members and officers planting a garden together at the elementary school, teenage boys playing basketball with patrol officers, a packed town hall with residents and police seated side by side at round tables. These aren't just photo ops, Andre said firmly. These are moments of genuine connection, the kind of connections that make it harder to see each other as stereotypes or threats. From his seat near the back, Officer Davis, recently reinstated to active duty, nodded in agreement. The past 6 months had been challenging for him, but he'd become an unexpected ally, speaking candidly to his fellow officers about his own journey of recognizing and addressing bias. Now I could stand here and tell you that everything's perfect, Andre said with a slight smile. That racism is solved in Pine Ridge, that no one ever gets pulled over unfairly anymore. But we all know that wouldn't be true. What is true is that we're moving in the right direction. He glanced down at his notes, then set them aside, preferring to speak from the heart. Last week, my nephew Jason came to visit. He's 16, just got his license. He asked if he could take my car to pick up pizza for dinner. Andre paused, his voice growing quieter. And I caught myself about to give him the talk. You know the one. Keep your hands visible. Don't make sudden movements. Be extra polite no matter what. Murmurs of recognition rippled through the audience, particularly from parents of black and brown teenagers. But then I stopped myself. Because something has shifted in Pine Ridge. I still worry. Of course I do. But I also have hope now. Hope that the officers who might pull him over have been through our community engagement program. Hope that they've sat in living rooms with families who look like mine and heard our stories. Hope that they've examined their own biases and committed to doing better. He looked toward Davis, who met his gaze with understanding. I let Jason take the car, and yes, I still held my breath until he came back. Old habits die hard. This drew knowing laughter from the crowd. But he returned with a story about getting lost and a friendly officer who helped him find the pizza place. No drama, no fear, just a kid getting directions from someone whose job it is to help. Andre stepped back as Chief Harmon approached the podium, carrying a folder of statistics. "Thank you, Dr. Wilson," Harmon said, shaking Andre's hand. "Your leadership has been invaluable." The chief turned to address the audience. "6 months ago, I promised transparency, accountability, and measurable change. Today, I'm here to deliver on that promise with our first quarterly report." He clicked to the next slide, which displayed a series of graphs and charts. Traffic stops in Pine Ridge have decreased by 32% overall. More importantly, the racial disparity in those stops has decreased by 47%. We're not where we need to be yet, but the trend is clear. He clicked to another slide. Civilian complaints are down 28%. Community satisfaction with police interactions is up 35%. And perhaps most significantly, officer job satisfaction has increased by 22%. This last statistic caused some surprise among the audience. "That's right," Harmon confirmed. "Contrary to what some feared, these changes haven't made officers' jobs harder. They've made them more rewarding. When you're building relationships instead of just enforcing laws, the whole job shifts." Lieutenant Rivera stepped forward to present the next part of the report, detailing the new training programs, community involvement initiatives, and policy changes that had been implemented. As Andre listened, he reflected on the journey of the past 6 months. There had been resistance, of course. Some officers had transferred out rather than participate in the new programs. A few community members had dismissed the entire effort as a public relations stunt. The local police union had initially pushed back against the Civilian Oversight Committee. But over time, small successes had built momentum. When officers started reporting more positive interactions with residents, their colleagues took notice. When community members saw police genuinely engaging rather than just patrolling, trust began to grow. When the data started showing improvement, even the skeptics had to acknowledge something was working. After the presentations concluded, people mingled over refreshments, continuing conversations that would have been unimaginable half a year earlier. Andre found himself in a circle with Davis, Washington, and Mrs. Chen, discussing plans for a neighborhood safety walk that would pair residents with officers. "Dr. Wilson," called a voice from behind him. Andre turned to find a young black woman he didn't recognize. "I'm Zoe Powell, Jason's friend from school. I just wanted to thank you for what you've done here." "I appreciate that," Andre replied, "but it's been a community effort." "I know," Zoe said, "but my dad says it all started because you chose to build bridges instead of burning them. When that video went viral, you could have just sued the department and walked away. Instead, you stayed and did the hard work." Andre was touched by her words. "Your dad sounds like a wise man." "He is," she agreed with a smile. "He's over there." She pointed to a man in uniform, Officer Joseph Powell, who had recently joined the community outreach team. He waved at Andre, who waved back, struck by the beautiful complexity of it all. Later that evening, as Andre and Tanya walked home through their neighborhood, they passed several neighbors out on their porches. Each one greeted them warmly, not just with polite nods, but with genuine smiles and conversation. "Remember when we first moved here?" Tanya asked as they turned onto their street. "How people would cross to the other side when they saw us coming?" Andre nodded. "Things have changed. Not just with the police," Tanya observed. "With everyone. It's like once people started having honest conversations about race with the police department, they realized they could have those conversations with each other too." As they approached their house, they spotted Officer Davis parked across the street, speaking with their elderly neighbor, Mr. Hoffman. The old man had rarely acknowledged them in the past, but lately, he'd been making an effort, bringing over tomatoes from his garden, asking about Tanya's clinic. Davis saw them and waved them over. "Mr. Hoffman was just telling me about his neighborhood watch from back in the 80s, he explained. "We're thinking about reviving the concept, but with a new approach, less about surveillance, more about connection." "That sounds promising," Andre said, genuinely interested. "Different times call for different methods," Mr. Hoffman said, his voice gruff but not unkind. "Back then, we didn't trust anyone we didn't know. Now I'm learning that maybe the problem was that we didn't know." Enough people. The simple wisdom of this statement struck Andre deeply. So much of what they'd accomplished in the past 6 months had been about exactly that. Getting to know each other as real people, not as stereotypes or statistics. As the conversation wound down and they finally headed inside, Tanya slipped her arm through Andre's. You know what I was just thinking? When all this started, you told me you didn't want it to become a big thing. But it did become a big thing, just not in the way either of us expected. Andre smiled, remembering his initial reluctance. I just wanted to drive home without being hassled. I never intended to start a movement. Sometimes life has bigger plans for us than we have for ourselves, Tanya said softly. Later that night, as Andre stood at their bedroom window looking out at the peaceful street, he spotted a black teenager walking alone, hands in his pockets, hood up against the evening chill. A police cruiser drove slowly past him. Andre tensed instinctively, years of conditioning kicking in. But instead of stopping, the officer simply raised a hand in greeting. The teenager waved back and continued on his way. It was a small moment, unremarkable, ordinary even. But in its very ordinariness lay the change they'd been working toward. Not perfection, not a complete erasure of centuries of distrust and discrimination, but a start. A new pattern that could, with continued effort and vigilance, replace the old one. As he turned away from the window, Andre felt something he hadn't fully allowed himself to feel until now. Genuine optimism about the future of his community and his place within it.